In a world ruled by appearances and advantage, disrespect is not just an insult, it is a declaration of war. Whether it's subtle mockery, public humiliation, or passive-aggressive attacks, every act of disrespect is an attempt to reduce your power. But what if you could turn their insult into your instrument of dominance? Today, we solve the ancient problem of power lost through silence, and how to reclaim it with strategy, not emotion. There's a moment when someone disrespects you, an insult tossed like a dagger hidden in a smile, a backhanded comment in front of others, slight that others laugh at but leaves your pride bleeding. Most people in that moment lose everything. Not their reputation, not their status, but their power, because they react. They snap, they defend, they explain, they plead. But understand this: the moment you react emotionally, you've already lost. You've confirmed that their words hit you, that you are affected, that they have control. That is exactly what a disrespectful person wants, to shift the balance of power without lifting a sword. But the Machiavellian mind doesn't operate like the ordinary mind. It doesn't rush. It doesn't explode. It watches. When someone disrespects you, your first move is not to speak. It is to observe. To study their motive, to recognize whether the insult was public, private, calculated, or impulsive. And more importantly, to measure who was watching. You become the hawk, high above the battlefield, seeing what others cannot. Because when you stay silent, you keep all your weapons. The moment you speak with emotion, you put them down. People are uncomfortable with silence. They fear it. When you do not respond, they begin to doubt their own power. They wonder, did he not hear me? Did he not care? Or worse, what is he thinking? That uncertainty becomes your shield. And behind it, you calculate. Your silence becomes heavier than any insult they delivered. While they expect a reaction, you give them nothing. And that nothing speaks louder than any words you could scream. This is not cowardice. This is restraint, kind of restraint only the strong can afford. Because if you cannot control your emotions, you cannot control anything. Your enemies feed off your weakness. Your allies watch your composure. In the court of public perception, the man who controls himself controls the game. Imagine a crowded room. Someone mocks you in front of others. The ordinary man will defend himself. He will raise his voice. He will try to reclaim dignity through confrontation. But all he does is confirm the disrespect. Crowd now sees him rattled. The mocker has won. But the Machiavellian, he does not respond. He does not laugh, nor explain, nor retaliate. He looks. He lets the silence expand. And soon the laughter fades. The crowd shifts. The attacker feels the weight of his own words hanging in the air with no resistance to define them. That is how power moves, in silence. What they do not understand is that your silence is not surrender. It is surveillance. You are taking notes. Who laughed? Who stayed quiet? Who looked at you? You're not just reacting to one insult. You're studying the battlefield. Because disrespect is not about this moment. It is about the pattern, the system, the larger strategy. And no king wins a war by rushing into the first insult he hears. You wait. Because patience is not passivity. It is power on pause. When you are silent, they wonder what you're planning. And when people start to speculate about your next move, you have already taken control. They're now reacting to you, and that is the first reversal of power. The moment they disrespect you and you do not flinch, they begin to see you differently. Not as someone they can provoke, as someone they must consider more carefully next time. This is how legends were made in the courts of Florence, in the power circles of Rome, in the cold strategy rooms of empires, not by shouting but by studying, not by emotion but by calculation. And when the time is right, when the cost of their disrespect is fully visible, when your image has been sharpened and your position solidified, only then do you move, and not with anger, but with elegance. But in that first moment when the room goes cold and someone throws words like daggers across the floor, you do what the weak cannot. Say nothing, you observe. Because your silence is not a sign of defeat, it is the beginning of your plan. Disrespect is not just about what is said to your face. It's about what is said about you when you leave the room. That is where your true power lies, in the echoes of your name, in the perception others carry when they hear about you. When someone disrespects you, your instinct may tell you to respond directly, to defend yourself, to prove them wrong with confrontation. But in the world of power, this is a trap, because the person who controls your image controls the battlefield. And in this war of perception, your reputation is your most dangerous weapon. There is a reason why kings did not respond to every insult from a peasant. Their image was crafted with precision. They walked in power, surrounded by symbols, rumors, elegance, mystery. Machiavelli understood that once your reputation is shattered, recovering power is nearly impossible. So the moment someone tries to stain your image, your strategy must not be loud retaliation, but quiet domination. You do not explain. You do not react. You ascend. You drown their petty insult beneath the weight of your greatness. You start by mastering the optics. Make sure every room you walk into, you walk with intention. Your presence must speak before you do. You build a reputation so composed, so effective, so silently dominant that their insult looks childish next to your reality. If someone mocks you for weakness, show unmatched discipline. If they call you a failure, elevate in your craft so swiftly that their words lose oxygen. You do not fight their words. You render them irrelevant. People believe the loudest voice wins. In Machiavellian thinking, it's not the loudest. It's the one most respected. And respect is not given through arguments. It is created through image. You become so consistently competent that people begin to doubt the disrespect itself. You make people question, if he's really weak, why does he win? If he's truly a fool, why does he move with such control? If he's unworthy, why do others follow him? You become untouchable not by replying, but by rising. That's what Machiavelli would whisper in your ear: let your victories speak. Let your work dominate the space their words tried to fill. Let your name rise so high that they choke on their own gossip. And here's the secret they'll never tell you. People believe what they see more than what they hear. Your visual dominance, your behavior, your accomplishments, your network, your cold poise under fire, all of this becomes the living proof that their words are nothing but smoke. When your reputation is sculpted with precision, you don't even need to defend yourself. Others will do it for you, because people don't protect the weak, they protect the powerful. They align with winners. So when your image is respected, it becomes armor. Every move you make feeds the legend. Every insult thrown at you bounces off, because it no longer matches the reality you've built. You're no longer seen as the man who was insulted. You're seen as the man who didn't even need to acknowledge it. You make yourself the kind of man whose name is said with pause, whose presence changes the atmosphere, whose silence is more terrifying than another's rage. That's not ego. That's strategy. You design how the world sees you, because in the Machiavellian code, power is not seized by force alone. It is cultivated through perception. And this is the part the disrespecter never expected. While they were trying to stain your image with a few words, you were building a masterpiece behind the curtain. You were strengthening your alliances, sharpening your discipline, refining your skills, dressing your name in elegance and strength. They attacked a version of you that no longer exists. By the time they realize it, too late. You've become someone they can no longer reach, let alone insult. And all of this happens without a single insult thrown back. Without a single confrontation. You don't play their game. You make them obsolete by mastering your own. Because in the end, the world remembers results, not rumors. They remember who rose, not who shouted. They remember the image you left behind, not the insult someone once spoke. That's how power works. That's how you reclaim control when someone disrespects you. Not by reacting in the moment, but by owning the narrative that comes after it. There is a mistake people make when they feel disrespected. They seek revenge in plain sight. They confront. They argue. They try to win in the open, believing that justice lies in direct confrontation. But the moment you strike where they can see it, you give them clarity. And clarity is comfort. You reveal your emotions. You reveal your limits. You give your enemy something to grab onto. That is not how power moves. That is not how a Machiavellian mind strikes. Real power punishes without fingerprints. It punishes through whispers, through influence, through the turning of heads in rooms they didn't know you could enter. When someone disrespects you, do not fall into the trap of public retaliation. Smile if you must. Nod. Let them think they've won. But inside you begin to move your pieces, because punishment is not about noise. It's about effect. And the most devastating effect is one they cannot trace back to you. When a person mocks you or undermines you, your goal is not to argue your worth. It is to quietly increase the cost of that disrespect. You do not make a scene. You don't slam doors. Instead, you begin to tighten the circle around them. Influence those who influence them. Turn their allies neutral. Withhold your value when they need it most. Let them find the door locked when they thought it would open. Let them notice they're not invited to the table, where decisions are made. The most dangerous kind of revenge is the kind that looks like coincidence. They won't know if you were behind it. They'll feel the shift, the sudden coldness, the subtle absence of support. Their rise slows down. Their influence weakens. They try to reach for opportunities that once came easily and find only silence. This is where your true power emerges, not in the fire of reaction, but in the ice of calculation. There's an ancient rule among real strategists: never attack when you're angry. Attack when it will matter most, when the moment delivers maximum damage. Not just emotional pain, but structural weakening, the kind of loss that reshapes their standing. When they feel the blow, they should have to ask themselves, was this him? Was this because of what I did? That uncertainty becomes its own prison. They will walk carefully around your name, not because you shouted, but because you didn't. And still, they suffered. You must understand something. People who disrespect you often assume you are harmless. They think your silence means weakness. Let them. The longer they believe that, the deeper your impact when the time comes. When Machiavelli wrote about the manipulation of power, he wasn't interested in morality. He was interested in effectiveness. And effectiveness means striking in such a way that your enemy cannot recover, and yet cannot find your hand in the blow. Sometimes, the most powerful move is subtraction. You remove access, you remove opportunity, you remove favor. They begin to feel the vacuum. People forget that influence isn't always about what you give. It's about what you can take away. You stop sharing your network. You stop offering support. You no longer mention their name in rooms of power, and the silence around them becomes their punishment. A slow erosion of position, a slow fading from relevance. They may try to provoke you again. They may sense your control and seek to rattle it. But that's the test. That's when your silence must remain colder, your gaze more distant. You're not a soldier brawling in the street. You're the shadow behind the politics, the one who sees the whole board. Because in the game of power, those who strike too early lose leverage. You wait until your position is superior. You wait until their foundation has weakened. And when you finally make your move, if you make it, they fall alone, without an audience, without a defense. The goal is not revenge for pleasure. The goal is strategic consequence. You make it known, without ever saying it, that disrespect carries a price. And that price is paid in opportunities lost, in reputations slowly undone, in alliances that disappear like smoke. And while they struggle to understand what changed, you walk forward, untouched, undisputed, and more feared than before. Because the man who punishes without speaking becomes a myth. And the myth is more powerful than the man. There's one answer more powerful than revenge, more lasting than retaliation, and more elegant than confrontation. It is evolution. When someone disrespects you, they expect you to come down to their level. They hope to trigger you, to see you respond, to watch you scramble for dignity. But the most brutal answer to their disrespect is not to fight them. It is to rise so far above them that they become irrelevant in the story of your ascent. You do not respond, you transcend. And in that transcendence, you take everything from them, without ever laying a finger on them. This is what Machiavelli understood better than any of his rivals. The game of power is not about silencing your enemies. It is about becoming so formidable that their words dissolve in your shadow. You don't chase validation. You don't seek to prove your worth to those who dared to mock you. Instead, you build yourself into a force of nature. You grow so focused, so competent, so visible in your success that your presence alone crushes the memory of their insult. They remember what they said about you. But the world no longer listens, because now the world sees what you become. That is the transformation. That is the revenge crafted not through emotion, but through power. You begin to redirect every ounce of that anger, that sting of disrespect, into momentum, into a fire that burns quietly behind your eyes, pushing you forward while they remain frozen in the past. You don't dwell on the insult. You turn it into a blueprint. They said you were weak. Then become unbreakable. Build your discipline like armor. Speak with such clarity that no one dares misinterpret you again. Move with such intent that even your silence has weight. Every time they remember what they said about you, they are forced to compare it to who you've become. And that comparison breaks them slowly, because they realize they spoke too soon. They disrespected a version of you that no longer exists. And now the new version doesn't even see them anymore. This is the difference between the powerful and the petty. The petty seek immediate validation. The powerful seek transformation. While they mock you, you evolve. While they laugh, you build. While they gather an audience, you gather skills, alliances, resources. Until one day, your results speak so loudly that no insult can be heard over them. That is how dominance is born, not by returning fire, but by becoming untouchable. This is not about ego. It is about redirection. You take what was thrown at you and you forge something with it. You understand that every insult is actually a confession that they see your potential and feel threatened by it. People rarely waste energy disrespecting the irrelevant. When they aim at you, they are telling you, you matter more than they want to admit. Use that. Don't waste your time on them. Spend it on yourself. Sculpt your presence. Expand your influence. Master your craft until you are so valuable that those who once insulted you now need you. And when that moment arrives, and it will, you don't have to remind them. You don't have to say a word. Your success will confront them more brutally than you ever could. They'll hear your name in rooms they can't enter. They'll see your rise from a distance and realize they can no longer even speak in your league. That is how the game is won. Not with revenge, but with elevation. You become the type of man they regret crossing. Not because you punished them, but because you surpassed them so thoroughly that they are left behind like a forgotten footnote in your origin story. While they remain frozen in that moment of disrespect, still clinging to the illusion of superiority, you are miles ahead, and every step you take forward makes their insult smaller. Not because it didn't hurt, but because you refuse to let it define you. You redefined yourself. That is the Machiavellian answer. Not to stoop, but to soar. Not to engage, but to escape gravity. Not to argue with the past, but to become the future. Because the highest form of revenge is to become so powerful that even their best attempt to hurt you becomes a gift. A gift you turned into your rise. And now, from the top, you do not look back, not because you've forgotten them, but because they no longer matter. You must understand, disrespect is never just about words. It is about power. It is a quiet war declared with a glance, a gesture, a whisper behind your back. And if you respond like everyone else, with emotion, with noise, desperation, you join the crowd of the powerless. But if you hold, observe, and calculate, you step into a different realm. A realm ruled not by reaction, but by strategy, by silence that stings, by reputation that crushes, by influence that moves behind the curtain, and by elevation so complete, your enemies can no longer reach you. You do not need to defend yourself when you become undeniable. You do not need to retaliate when you become unforgettable. In a world of impulsive fools, be the cold mind that sees 10 moves ahead. That is how the disrespected become dangerous. That is how the forgotten become feared. That is how you win, not with rage, with power silent, ruthless, absolute.